We live in a world obsessed with desire, especially the kind that promises pleasure. The body craves, and the mind follows. But have you ever noticed that right after the pleasure peaks, there's a strange emptiness that follows, an eerie silence, as if the soul knows it was tricked again. Lust sells us a promise. If I have this body, this experience, this moment, I will finally feel complete. But that feeling never lasts, and so we chase again and again, a cycle without end. Philosopher Plato warned us of this illusion thousands of years ago. He described a force called Eros, a deep, inner longing. But Eros wasn't just about sex, it was a spiritual hunger, a yearning to return to something eternal, to beauty itself, to truth, to the divine. But modern lust distorts this longing. Instead of seeking the eternal, we reduce the sacred to the skin. The soul's hunger for wholeness becomes the ego's hunger for stimulation. And in this distortion, we lose our way, because lust can never truly satisfy. It only stimulates the senses. But it cannot touch the soul. It excites the body, but it does not fulfill the heart. It's a mirage, a desert illusion. You see the oasis, you run toward it. But when you arrive, it disappears, and you are still thirsty. Worse, you are now addicted to the running. In a society where everything is about speed and consumption, lust fits perfectly. It requires no patience, no depth, no vulnerability. But the tragedy is that the more we feed lust, the more we forget what real fulfillment even feels like. Because true fulfillment is quiet, still, sacred. It does not roar like desire, it whispers like peace. Lust is not just a feeling, it's a biochemical storm, a carefully wired sequence of signals, hormones, and ancient instincts, programmed deep into the brain. When you feel that rush, that instant magnetic pull, it's not magic, it's dopamine. Dopamine is the brain's reward chemical. It's not released when you achieve satisfaction, it's released in anticipation of it. It doesn't reward fulfillment, it rewards pursuit. That's why lust feels so addictive, because it's not about love, it's about novelty. The new, the unknown, the forbidden. Every swipe, every image, every flirtation creates a tiny surge, a neurological hit, and your brain lights up like a drug addict's, quite literally. In fact, MRI scans show that the brain reacts to sexual stimuli the same way it reacts to cocaine. So what happens over time? The brain begins to adapt. It needs more stimulation to feel the same rush, more intensity, more variety, more risk. This is how addiction begins, not to sex, but to dopamine. And this addiction has consequences, because every time you chase quick pleasure, you're training your brain to prefer instant rewards over long-term peace. Focus disappears. Stillness becomes unbearable. Deep love feels boring. Discipline feels like death. This is no accident. Big tech, advertising, and even adult content industries have weaponized your biology. They know your system, and they know how to hijack it. They don't want you to pause. They want you to scroll. They don't want you fulfilled. They want you hooked. The more your brain is wired for pleasure, the harder it is to experience joy. And joy is what makes life worth living. Because pleasure is a momentary escape. But joy is a state of being. And that state can only arise when the mind is free from craving. If you feel scattered, restless, or always chasing the next high, it's not your fault, it's your wiring. But the good news, wiring can be rewritten, and that's where awareness begins. Lust is often misunderstood as a mere pursuit of pleasure. But look deeper, and you'll see that it's rarely just about the body. It's about what we're trying to escape. Behind many lustful urges lies a silent suffering, a fear of loneliness, An emptiness that we can't explain, a boredom so deep it threatens our sense of identity. In these moments, lust becomes a distraction. It masks the pain with fantasy. It replaces silence with stimulation, and it convinces us that we are wanted, desired, even if just for a fleeting moment. Carl Jung believed that much of human behavior is driven by parts of ourselves we have rejected, what he called the shadow. The shadow contains our fears, our guilt, our shame, and often our repressed desires. When we don't integrate these unconscious parts, they don't disappear. They act out through addictions, obsessions, and compulsions. Lust then becomes a projection, an unconscious attempt to make contact with what we've buried, not love, not connection, but a cry from the soul, seeking itself. Freud too saw lust not as love, but as a psychological defense mechanism, a way to manage anxiety, to displace inner conflict onto external pleasure. It's easier to pursue the thrill of a stranger than to face our own emotional wounds. It's easier to seduce someone else than to sit in silence and confront our own brokenness. This is why lust often feels more intense when we are sad, lost, or abandoned. Not because our desires are stronger, but because our pain is deeper. And in a world that avoids silence, where vulnerability is mocked and loneliness is pathologized, lust offers a temporary exit, a fantasy, a role to play. But like all escapes, it doesn't heal, it postpones, it numbs, and it ensures that the real wound remains untouched. True healing begins when we stop running, when we stop sedating our emotions with stimulation, and when we finally ask, what am I trying to avoid when I reach for lust? That's where transformation begins, not in the chase, but in the confrontation, not in desire, but in awareness. Lust by itself is a natural human impulse, but in the hands of society, it becomes a weapon. We live in a culture that doesn't just acknowledge lust, it sells it, packages it, and profits from it. From billboards to Instagram reels, from music videos to marketing campaigns, lust has become the easiest way to catch your attention and steal your focus. Why? Because nothing hijacks the human mind faster than desire, and the system knows it. Corporations, advertisers, and algorithms have learned to tap into your primal brain, not to fulfill you, but to keep you hooked. Every image, every headline, every swipe is designed not to inform, but to stimulate, to arouse just enough hunger that you keep scrolling, keep watching, keep buying. Pornography is the clearest example. It's not about intimacy or connection. It's about manufactured desire, mass-produced fantasies that numb the soul while lighting up the nervous system. It creates the illusion of control, while slowly eroding your capacity to feel real love. And it's not just porn. Fashion industries objectify bodies. Streaming platforms use sexualized thumbnails. Social media influencers turn seduction into a brand strategy. You are not the customer. You are the product. Your attention, your longing, your loneliness. These are now marketable commodities. The tragedy, as society sexualizes everything, it empties it of meaning. The sacred becomes shallow. Love becomes lust. Intimacy becomes performance. And as we consume more, we feel less. This is not accidental. It is a form of control. Because a man who is addicted to pleasure is easy to manipulate. He will not rebel. He will not reflect. He will not awaken. He will obey. He will chase shadows while forgetting his soul. A distracted society is a docile society. And lust, endlessly provoked, keeps the masses docile, longing for stimulation, but too drained for transformation. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Your desire is sacred. Your energy has power, and when it is no longer hijacked by corporations and screens, it can be reclaimed, redirected, and transformed. Lust isn't the enemy, but the system that manipulates it. That is what keeps you small. To break free, you must first recognize how you're being controlled. Lust is not the enemy, but our unawareness of it is. Desire becomes destructive not because it exists, but because it goes unexamined. We let it drive us, control us, define us, without ever pausing to ask, where is this desire coming from? And where is it leading me? The moment you become aware, truly aware, the game begins to change. You begin to observe the craving instead of obeying it. You begin to see how lust tries to fill a void it can never satisfy. And in that seeing, a strange kind of power awakens. Eastern wisdom has known this truth for millennia. In yogic philosophy, there is a path called Brahmacharya, often misunderstood as celibacy. But in its truest sense, Brahmacharya means alignment. It is the redirection of sexual energy from lower indulgence to higher realization. That same energy which seeks the body can be channeled toward creativity, discipline, meditation, and clarity. In Taoist alchemy, it is called transmutation. Desire is not to be killed, but refined, elevated, until it becomes a force that nourishes the soul, not just excites the senses. Even modern psychology echoes this. What you suppress gains power, but what you witness without judgment loses its grip. When you start witnessing lust as a signal, not a command, it loses its tyranny. And in that space of mindfulness, you reclaim your freedom. Because discipline is not punishment, it is a form of love for your future self. And mindfulness is not suppression, it is the illumination of impulse, the torchlight that reveals where you've been enslaved. Through awareness, lust becomes your teacher. It shows you your hunger, it reveals your wounds, and if you are willing, it guides you to your liberation. In the end, the war is not between you and desire, but between awareness and unconsciousness. You are not weak because you feel lust. You are only lost when you let it lead your life. But awareness, real, grounded awareness, has the power to transform even the most primitive urges into profound self-realization. So the next time desire rises, don't run, don't indulge, watch, breathe, let it pass. And in that moment, you are no longer a slave. You are becoming sovereign. If this reflection stirred something within you, if you're ready to go deeper, to confront your shadows and rise above the illusions, like, share, and subscribe to Metaphysics Diary. Because here, we don't run from the truth, we walk through it together.